G'day, welcome to Mark and Sam After Work. Today I want to do a video on zeroing your rifle. And I suppose there's lots of questions that go with this. It probably breaks up into a two-part video with some other bits and pieces I'll put into it. But to start off with, this isn't the shoot 3 shots and then adjust and how to do it, turn the dials, that side of things. It's much more the process and the distances you should be zeroing your rifle to. They're not all the same, it's not the same process, but there's a lot of things that should be kept in mind when you are zeroing your rifle. To start off with, no matter what the rifle is, your zero, or where you actually want the crosshairs to be aimed at, should be done in the way of the process, should be done the same way you're going to shoot the rifle. Too many people sit the rifle in a lead sled or in a big set of bags or something or other to hold it to make the rifle real still, so it's nice and easy to shoot, and then shoot it, and then that's where they feel their zero is. And for that lead sled or that set of bags or however they've got the rifle braced, that probably is exactly where the rifle is zeroed, nice and neat and tidy. Now whether that's 50 yards or it's 100 yards or it's 400 yards or whatever you're doing, that's another part of the conversation, but that's set up to there. But what I want to say is that if you haven't realized already, rifles shoot to a different place depending on how they're actually shot. So if you're shooting it offhand, if you're shooting it off bipod, if you're shooting it off a bench, if you're shooting it prone, if you're shooting it, there's all sorts of things that change that where that zero actually is. So someone who does the trying to be thorough, I find it a bit sort of the way around the problem, but trying to be thorough and sticks the rifle in a lead sled and then shoots away to where they get it zeroed on that at whatever that distance is not going to end up with the zero that suits how it is most likely to be shot, unless of course you're shooting in lead sled. But the moment that rifle is a hunting rifle and it's going to be shot off a rest out of the window of a truck, or it's going to be shot off a log, sitting down, laying down behind a log, or it's going to be shot off a set of sticks, or it's going to be shot in some other fashion, that zero will be up to 3 MOA away from where it was. So if you're only shooting 25 yards or 50 yards, that probably isn't a concern. If you're shooting 400 yards or 600 yards, the maximum of where I feel it is ethical to go hunting to, then that's almost certainly a miss. And let alone the conditions you already had to allow for, the rifle wasn't really aimed at where you thought it was, because the rifle's being shot differently. Now, as for why that is, the shot differently, as to why it is, there's lots of engineering about it and there's lots of videos I've got about it, but just understand that as a basic. And in some cases, okay, it shoots exactly the same. That's great. But if you presume that it's not going to be shot, it's not going to end up with exactly the same point of impact when you shoot it differently, then it's a very simple thing to figure out. Zero it the way you're going to shoot it. And if you're going to shoot it all sorts of different ways, make sure that rifle shoots to the same zero with all those different ways of shooting. And yes, there are bits and pieces you can change on rifles to remedy some of those problems, but just simply presume it's going to hit to a different place when it's shot differently. So that's the first and fundamental thing that I see done wrong by gunsmiths, by people setting up rifles, is this thought that the lead sled is probably the classic, put it in there, it's nice and easy to hold dead still, shoot it, adjust it, there it is, it's all done. So that's one of the first things that I see as a mistake for actually zeroing a rifle. The next bit would be, which I'll go briefly into, and that's the distance you're shooting it at. The distance you're zeroing it at, I should say. Now, in my world, ELR, we're tactical scope, we're dialing scopes all the time. It's and a centerfire rifle, it's very simple. We dial it, we adjust from 100 yards. Simple as that. That's our zero, 100 yards, and we're always adjusting up from that. Some people say, well, why wouldn't you go to, if you're always shooting over 600 or over 1,000 yards, why wouldn't you dial up to that as a zero, and then you'd get more elevation? You'd be able to adjust more because your zero's up higher. Truth is, no, that doesn't really work that way. The first, even 1,000 yards, you're not saving enough MOA to make much difference at the other end. It's the other end that matters. It's also working your maths and making more consistent with your apps and that side of things, but 100 yards is where we do that too. That's my side of things. As for Target guys, listen, you may be zeroing at, you only shoot 1,000 yards, so why not zero at 1,000 yards? Get the scope pointing straight through the center of the glass and get it set up there. So you're a little bit up, a little bit down, depending on the conditions. That makes sense too. The likes of a rimfire or an air rifle type thing, then you might be coming down to where you're zeroing at 50 yards or 25 yards because that suits where you start from, that side of things. Those are all relevant details to understand, and adjusting or zeroing to what suits your genre makes sense. The place that's most maths involved with this, I should say, or most figuring out involved with this, is a hunting rifle, which is a rifle you're not planning on doing any adjusting on your scope. So you're going to set it up to that zero, and then it depends on what you're generally shooting. And something in the varmint sort of stuff that we do around here with a centerfire rifle, then probably zeroing around the 250 yards, because you're normally going to be shooting somewhere between 200 and 300 yards. And in that neck of the woods, you can then zero it at 250, and that you basically can shoot flat with a decent thing like a 243 or a 6 Creedmoor or even the 223 sort of stuff. You can get on and do that with the right ammo. You can basically hold on in the normal comfort range you're going to be shooting at. And that varies, of course. If you're shooting elk or something or other and it's at a different distance, whether it's 100 yards or at 600 yards, you make sense of that to what suits your round, the trajectory, and the reticle to make sure it works on that side of things. So then there's also BCDs, BDCs and that sort of stuff in the way of the bullet drop compensated reticles. All that makes sense. And there isn't a set rule for any of that sort of stuff. It is making sense to where it is. And once again, you're zeroing to how you're shooting rather than simply what suits at the range. You've got 100 yards at the range, so that's what you do. But then you go out and you actually hunt at 600 yards or at, like I said, that 200 to 300. Then it's go out and do it out there to actually see how it is. So the other bit that I want to get into here, which is very much the process of this, is also when it comes to zeroing your rifle, and particularly with hunting rifles. With target rifles, with ELR rifles, that sort of stuff, what we do, even with the likes of the plinking with the 22, then our zero is done with a warm barrel. And the warm and cold is where I'm about to get into here, and this is about cold bore and about hot rifles and warm rifles and all the rest of it. And I suppose temperature does have a little bit to do with it. It's more about getting too much warmth in a hunting rifle or a sporter barrel, that sort of stuff, and they start to lose accuracy. But otherwise, in general, when we're talking about a cold bore, the temperature isn't really what we're talking about. We haven't got a thermometer on there that we're actually reading the temperature to go with. Cold means hasn't been fired. And it doesn't even mean cooled down to the largest degree. Cold bore means hasn't been fired. And it means a lot more things to it. And I may do a completely separate video on that. But for the zeroing part of this conversation, when I'm saying with the likes of our ELR, with our target shooting, with target shooters, all that sort of stuff, their zero is, and our zero is really once the rifle's up and running. The first shot or the first couple of shots may be a little bit off. And this does move into where cold bore shift, which is definitely something I'll do a separate video on, but that means you have a set adjustment that is the first shot goes here and then the shots after that all go here. And of course you zero to the shots that go after here for all that target shooting. The normal sort of where the rifle is used a bit and needs to stay in that zero all the time. That is the opposite for a hunting rifle. And not a pest control rifle when you're shooting lots and lots and lots, but a hunting rifle. You want to go out and stalk and you've really got one shot. You've got a follow-up shot you may need to use a couple, but really it's about that one shot. Then your cold bore shift that you may have and you may not have, or your cold bore shot in the likes of the rifle hasn't been fired before that day, that's the only important shot to you. And that means if you've got your rifle and you worked out your zero really thoroughly and you've done 20 shots, so you've got a really thorough shot, really thorough zero, worked out properly for that. That can be largely irrelevant to the shot that you actually matter. The shot that actually matters is that first shot. And I would say in the brief bit of talking about cold bore, basically that bore hasn't had a bullet down it that day, maybe up to, and in a good rifle, if it's over 1.5 MOA away, then there's something going on, something else going on. But it may well be 1 minute of angle. So that's 6 inches at 600 yards, which might be too much if you already understand that you have to then also work out the conditions and you don't know where that 6 inches difference is. That's a miss. So it's one of the mistakes I see with zeroing a hunting rifle. If you are zeroing a hunting rifle, then the real effort goes down to it is that one shot. And how to do that, the process that I go through is quite simple. There is always with a rifle that I want to go and do that sort of stuff with, there's a certain amount of working out how it shoots. Whether you do load development or you're just working out with your zeroing properly, you're making sure it's consistent in what it does, those are all relevant things. And to that, you zero it. Absolutely. But that isn't the end of the job. With a hunting rifle, the end of the job comes with the next day, go out, where it's been sat in the gun safe or it's been sat in the gun case overnight, whatever it is, just like going hunting, and then go out and do that first shot. Go and do that first shot at whatever that zero is, wherever it needs to be, do that. And see where it actually goes. Now, if it's right on, it's only half a minute out, then I would tend to do it again if I've got the opportunity and make sure it's in the same place. But then I know where that is. Then I've recorded that. If that's completely irregular, well, then there's some stuff to figure out. And that's the simple trick of doing something like that. Basically a one-shot rifle, and you really need to trust it for whatever that is. Well, you need to prove that. And you don't prove it by shooting all day and making sure it's consistent there. You shoot it by shooting, or you prove it by shooting on consecutive days or the next week or whatever it is. You go out and do exactly what it's got to do. If it is inconsistent, then you've got something to work on. Then your zeroing process is teaching you that either you, the shooter, needs to do more work with your first shot. That can be an issue. It means that over left you've inside of the barrel needs some work and you need to do that. It might mean that the action is just not sitting properly in the stock and the first shot is what pushes it back in the stock. It might mean that something else is inherently wrong with the way that setup is. It is about cold bore shift, which we're talking about, but what I want to say is it's not about the temperature. You can't go and stick it in the air conditioned room where it's and get it up to ambient temperature outside and then go and use it. It'll be fine. Or get it warmer. It's not about temperature. It's about that first shot. It's about the bullet running down the barrel for the first time. It's about the first time it goes bang, and it can be about you, the shooter. It can be that you haven't got that comfortable yet, and that first shot is something you have to do more practice with. So I think that's the overall. There's a couple of videos. I will go on and do another video about cold bore shift to make sure about that and do more explanations about the cold bore side of things. It's a bit of a misnomer, that cold word, but you get what it's about. The main thing I want to say about that is the things to take away from this is your zero should be done as you shoot the rifle, as you're going to shoot the rifle. The distance is once again relevant to what you're actually doing, and then the actual zero for a hunting rifle, which is going to go and do that one shot, should once again be for that one shot. The 25 after that really don't matter, because that's playing, and that might be working out a load, that might be doing that sort of stuff, but your actual shot that matters is that one shot, so that's the one you should practice. And that doesn't work by simply leaving it for half an hour and come back and shoot it again. It might be the same, but until you've done that cold bore shot, which really was the next day or the next week, and it hit exactly where you needed to hit, then you don't know. And the last bit that goes with that in that scenario, if that really is too irregular, that starts to tell you how far you can take that shot. If you find that you really cannot control that first minute, you have 1 minute of angle is where we don't know where the first one's going to go, then you combine that with the fact that you've got to read the weather as well, and you've got to get that right, and the group size you've already got, you can end up where you're looking at a 4-minute group is your first shot. And then how far can you take that shot with 4 minutes of angle? starts to come down to that 100 yards, 150 yards for a lot of people, which is why a lot of shots don't go as well as they thought they would. But part of remedying this is working out how to zero your rifle correctly to the job that you're doing. Anyway guys, hope that makes some sense. Thank you very much for checking in, and catch you next time.